Kia ora, kia ora. Welcome, welcome. My name is Felicity Evans and I'm one of the board members for Global Woman. It's a real pleasure to have you here today, particularly given how horrendous the weather has been. Who's been through 2 changes of clothes today already? Yeah, I have. Particularly warm welcome also to my fellow Global Woman members around the room. Thank you for coming and supporting us, and especially our new members as well. Today is International Women's Day, and gosh, it's been a full-on day. A few of us were up for breakfast with the PM at 5. I had to get up at 5:30. I don't know why I did that, but she was fantastic. And one of the stories I want to tell you is something she talked about. She talked about how important it is that we're all role models, that many of us don't like being role models, particularly Kiwis and women. We shrug off that mantra of being a role model. We look around the room and we go, actually, she's really special. I've met her before and she's fantastic. She's far more fantastic than I am. In fact, I'm not even fantastic. And so we shrug off those moments. We shrug off those moments when we could be mentoring someone, we could be encouraging someone, we could be giving them insight about their potential. And when we do that, how else are we fulfilling that person's destiny? Fortunately, the PM talked about her moment that mattered with Marilyn Waring. I mean, who wouldn't have a moment that mattered with Marilyn Waring? But she did when she was 15. And the impact that that had, and what it made me think about today when I was reflecting was each one of us often meets young girls, we often meet young people. And at that moment when we could share our insight, what drove us to drive towards gender equality, what drove us to be passionate in this subject, we too could ignite that inspiration in someone else. And who knows where they could be? They could be the PM in some time. So that was my little opening line. I do want to tell you about health and safety matters. If there's an earthquake in Wellington, not that we have them that many, but occasionally we do, you know what to do, drop, cover and hold. Stay where you are, and the fine staff at Te Papa will tell us what to do and where to go. In the event of a fire, the alarm fire, the waiting areas are, or assembly areas are, outside the museum, by the Circuit Theatre, so the main entrance over there, or over by Barnett Street corner on Cable Street next to Waitangi Park. So that's the plan we're going to do. Now, I just want to talk to you a little bit about Global Woman. Global Women's Organisation is an organisation made up of about 300 plus women. And the idea of what these members do and what we do is how we can drive our purpose about increased diversity in leadership and increased representation of women and other diverse areas within the country. Because we believe that if there's 300 plus of us, the impact that we can have collectively towards driving a better and more inclusive New Zealand is what we can do. So that's our purpose in life. And we do that through developing and mentoring other women. And we run many programs, particularly the Breakthrough Leaders program. And I can believe there's some people here who are on the alumni of the Breakthrough Leaders program. But I want to hand over now, because what I want to talk about is not only Global Woman, but our partners in Global Woman. And we have many progressive organisations who partner us and believe in the same ethos that we do. And one of those partners is PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers. And I want to introduce Mark Averill. Mark is the CEO and the senior partner for PwC and is here to join us and to talk to us and provide an introduction for all of our fine speakers tonight. So thank you and have a great night.
Well, tēnā koutou katoa, hei mihi mahana, kia koutou, kua hui, mai nei, nō rewa, tēnā koutou, a tēnā koutou katoa. Look, good evening everyone, and a very warm welcome to you all, and thanks Felicity for that introduction. Delighted to be here in the capacity as partner with Global Woman, and I'm looking forward to a fantastic evening. I've got to say, as I've actually done the introduction in both Wellington and Christchurch during the week, it really is a tremendous event as we celebrate International Women's Day and particularly Balance for Better, 2 fantastic themes. A great turnout here tonight in Wellington, and I'm delighted as I look up, feeling an absolute minority standing on the stage here. A few PwC colleagues to support me, and I think in terms of my counting and looking around, I think there might be 3 other blokes. So thanks guys for coming along. Look, again, Balance for Better all about value that gender diversity creates, and it is something as a CEO that absolutely resonates with me. I am a really big believer in the value of gender diversity and more broadly inclusion. I sort of see it as something that, look, it's not just the right thing to do, but is absolutely also critical, for an organisation that we, such as PwC, that we have the ability to bring the diversity of thinking, because that's what our clients want, and also it's just the progress that we need to make in order to remain relevant. I've mentioned the fact that it's important, and when I look at PwC, we're an employer of just over 1,500 people in New Zealand, and we really see that we have a responsibility to ensure that we are a leader in part of the conversation, to make sure that we keep ourselves as relevant as we can for the future. We don't want to be relevant just to for our clients, but probably more importantly, make sure that we're relevant for our people. We want our people to think of our environment as one which they're not just pleased to be part of, but are absolutely proud to be part of it. So having an inclusive environment we see as being really, really important. When I have sort of looked back at the time that I've had as CEO, I've been CEO at PwC for about 2.5 years, and increasingly, realising that in order for us to change the dial on diversity, we've got to be far more bold. We've really got to be willing to embrace the change that's required. And be far more instructive, not so much instructive, but be prepared to intervene so that we can really make the challenge. Because without that, we're not going to provide the environment that we aspire to create. We realise it's actually really quite difficult to do that. So we don't feel that we're not just that we don't feel, but we're very aware that we need some assistance from others, and that's where our partnership with Global Women has been fantastic, and importantly, associated that with is the association with Champions for Change. The Champions for Change environment does enable business leaders to come together and talk about their own learnings and share some of their experiences, and probably a great example of that is the 40-40-20 that's been talked a bit recently, but something that all Champions of Change members have undertaken to look to bring. So when we're looking to make, and look at our workplace, we want to make sure that we've got, at every level, at least 40% females, 40% males, and 20% of either gender. And for me, I think that's also really important to have, some targets, so that people can be held accountable, because what gets measured is more likely to get done. So again, we see that as as an important part of the focus that we have internally. Tonight, you hear the opportunity to hear from 5 fantastic speakers who will all have their own unique experiences to share. And that's certainly something that I believe is, like Felicity mentioned, the importance of role models. So my encouragement to all of you would be to listen and to reflect on the stories that they share as you think about what are some of the takeaways that you can take back and bring to life in your own development as as individuals and also in leaders. And certainly when I look at our own experience within PwC, the value of role models is, been fantastic. So again, it's a great opportunity to listen and hear some great stories. So look, thanks again for coming along this evening. The format is going to be each of the speakers are going to come up one after the other. It's a TED Talk type approach. I think it's about 10 minutes each. So without further ado, I'll hand over to our first speaker, Rachel Leota. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko auraki tuku moanga, ko kiwa tuku moana, ko waimakarere tuku awa, ko Ngāti Whiti me Ngāti Pākehā tuku oku iwi, ko Rachel Leota tuku ingoa. It's a real delight to be here, Talufalava and Bolavanaka. I have to say I'm pretty surprised to be asked to be speaking here with you today. There's a pretty illuminary type panellists that we have here tonight also speaking, but it's a really great honour, and particularly because of today, today being International Women's Day, and really good opportunity to cap off a really fantastic day with you. I just wanted to run a few things past you, just to get you up to a little bit more speed with the Department of Corrections, Arapautama Aotearoa, because I'm pretty confident that with the exception of Amanda Miller, many of you won't know much about our organisation. So we're the single largest government department in Aotearoa. We have 10,000 people in prison that we care for, and 30,000 people in the community who are serving community sentences and orders. So it's a pretty big proportion of our communities in New Zealand that we care for. In order to do that, we have a fantastic staffing group of around 9,500 people. And our Chief Executive, Christine Stevens, is here today as well. My role is the National Commissioner, so effectively I'm in charge of all our frontline operations, and that amounts to about 8,500 people who report through to me that I'm ultimately responsible for, and that's, you can imagine, a pretty big thing, something I take very seriously. But something that always gives me confidence is I know I'm not alone. I'm not alone because wonderful leadership colleagues, Christine and our executive leadership team, wonderful teams and managers leading people, and our frontline staff are just tremendous. In terms of where women fit into Arapautama Aotearoa, we have around about 48% of our staff are women now. And I know many of you will probably think, when you think about corrections, you probably think male staff or men, and you probably think uniforms. So I thought I'd bring half of that to you tonight. So 48% of all of our staff are women, and that was not like it was when Celia Lashley joined the Department of Corrections, or the Department of Justice it was back then in 1985, is our first woman corrections officer working in a men's prison. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from you a bit later, Amanda, about some of the journey you've been on, discovering Celia's amazing impact in our organisation, but New Zealand more broadly. That's increased, so our 48% representation has increased by about 55% over the last 10 years. So corrections is really pushed in thinking about the fact that we're caring for a community of people, we're responding to people who need us, our help, to help change, to help see things differently. And the only way we can do that is if we represent the communities that we serve and the people who we provide services to. And having women, great number of women around, tremendous women, is really important for us to be able to do that. And it means that we can build more positive relationships, particularly for men. So the men in our care often haven't had great relationships with women, it will be fair to say. They've often had very abusive relationships with women, have not seen the value in women, have not understood what it's like to be a peer with a woman. And so that's one of the really great things that women can bring in the presence of our organisation. We also have a high number of women working in community corrections. So we are wonderful probation officers doing some excellent work, and the number of women in that area has grown by 91% over the last 10 years, so that's been tremendous. And the last sort of fast fact I want to share with you is that corrections has worked really hard around the gender pay gap, and I know that's been a big topic of discussion today and many parts of the year, but we're down to about 1.64% for our gender pay gap. We think that's pretty good effort compared to the Some of you may not know, but the public service average is 12%. So we're doing pretty good. And we need to do better, and particularly I think there's been a lot of conversation about the ethnic pay gap, and that's definitely an area that we need to move on. So there's some quick stats for you just about the department. So I thought it might be useful just to share a little bit about my personal journey. I know the theme is around better balance, and thought I could just share a few of my experiences with you that may resonate. I grew up in Christchurch. Love the Crusaders. They're playing, I think, tonight. So still, even though I've lived over half my life here in Wellington now, still a big Canterbury person at heart. And I was a person, very much a tomboy, I suppose. I don't know if we still call girls tomboys now. I've got 2 sons, so I'm a little bit out of touch with young girls. But I was a tomboy. You know, my family were really good at saying girls can do anything. Right, you all remember that. I don't think we hear it as much now because it's just expected, right? But back when I was a kid growing up in the 80s, it was girls can do anything, and so I did, you know. I was on the milk run, I was on the cricket team, I was on the soccer team, you know, and all of those teams, my teammates, all boys, right? You look at things now, it's changed completely. And even in recent years, I'll just share with you an observation that my 9-year-old son made a couple of years ago. He said to me, "Mum, are you sure you played cricket when you were a girl?" And I said, "Yes, definitely sure." And he goes, "But are you really sure?" And I said, "Yes." I said, why are you asking me this?" And he said, "Oh, Mum, because there's just no women cricket on TV, so surely it can't exist." This was only a couple of years ago, and now it's fantastic. We're getting the series of Indian series that we were just here recently. We're hearing women commentators, rightfully so, with their cricket brains, sharing their views in the commentary box. And unfortunately, this is still quite a recent phenomena, so we haven't really moved very quickly. We've got heaps to go, haven't we? So anyway, so there I was in Christchurch doing my thing, and actually not even thinking about being a girl, to be all honest with you. I never thought that I was different. I just got on and did what I enjoyed, and did all these things. And I remember when I started at high school, I wanted to join the cricket team. It was actually, by high school time, it was all girls. We played in the women's competition, so that was even better. But I remember meeting our head prefect at our school. Her name was Jo, and I remember thinking, she's really nice. And she has a really nice way about her. You know, she's a leader, clearly, but without having to say, "I'm the leader." And I thought, wow, and you're our head prefect. And I thought, right there in third form, that's what I want to do. And that's, I think, my first recognition of a role model when I look back. And the thing I regret most in life is never letting Jo know that she has sort of shaped my pathway in my life. Because, 5 years later, I did. I became the head girl. I was very proud of that. And lots of people who aren't head prefects don't want to hear that, but those of us that, it's still all right to brag a little bit. So that was great, and again, never really thought about being a good girl, being different. I had lots of friends that were boys and young men, and never thought about being different. And to be honest, it wasn't until I joined the workforce, and I wouldn't say face discrimination. I don't think I've been in a fortunate situation where I haven't been, well, at least my consciousness has not seen active discrimination against me. But there were comments, you know. I was telling a colleague today that, Rachel only gets somewhere because she's got nice hair. I'm like, if only it was that easy, right? You know. And I thought, why would people say that? Why would a man say that? Would another man say that about another guy? I don't think so. And so that sort of comments for me doesn't hold me back. It actually drives me forward. I'm sort of a person who likes to prove a bit of a point. If someone says I can't do something, and then I'll, try my best to prove them wrong. And that was a bit of a motivation for me to stretch and thrive a little bit further and think about, well, what can I really achieve? And I know it's not my hair. I know. So I started to think about opportunities and take up opportunities. And I was really lucky in our organisation. I mean, I joined corrections 15 years ago. So, when I was 10, maybe not 10, but you know, it's been a while now. But very early on in my career in corrections, I had really good mentors and sponsors, I think is probably a better way to say it. And some of them were men, actually. You know, they saw that I had some talent, some leadership ability, the ability to drive some things forward. And I've been involved with some tremendous projects and stuff within our organisation and change over that time. And there has been times where I've landed in a prison and staff kind of look at you initially a little bit sceptical. What's this girl coming to talk to me about? Why is she telling me to do this? And you know, I think in any environment when you are not the mainstream, you're not the dominant thing, we all have to fight a little bit, don't we? We have to do a little bit of convincing that actually it's okay, you're going to be safe, I'm here to work with you. So I think a lot of women have to put up with that. They have to do a little bit of extra justification. You know, if I'm not wearing my uniform and I tell someone I'm the National Commissioner, often the first question was, oh, really? Are you? Oh, okay, right. But I'm sure, again, if I was a man, or there was a male National Commissioner, no one would blink an eye. So, you know, that can be a little bit frustrating, but equally I think, you know, for the next woman National Commissioner who comes along, they won't have to do that, because I'm doing that for them now, right? And many women in the past in our organisation have done a whole heap of other things that have broken through barriers and stereotypes in order to allow us to flourish. And I've been really lucky from that perspective. I think the other thing that I've been able to achieve has been able to have a family, which is incredibly important to me. And my husband looks after our two amazing, terrific boys. And he is just the most tremendous parent. And, you know, I have had to make sacrifices to do the work that I do. I mean, you've heard me, 8,500 staff, you know, a 24/7 business, things happen in corrections all the time. So you can imagine that I have to give a lot of myself to my work. And I'm kind of happy to do that. I've chosen to do that, but I know it comes at a cost. But in my situation, I'm totally supported by my family, and I know that the time I spend with my children becomes that quality time. Maybe not always that quantity, but the quality. And I know not every woman has that in their life. I know a lot of men do, but not every woman. So I know how fortunate I am in my situation. And I think it's really important for me to role model to my sons that women can be and are successful no matter what they do. And women are capable and can perform all of the roles that men do. And my kids are pretty proud of me and have often begged me to come and pick them up at school in my uniform, which I have done once. But, you know, I have been backed, and I think, as I said, not everyone's as fortunate as me to be able to have that happen. And my husband has obviously had to make sacrifices himself for his career to devote time to our children. And he knows now how many women, how many mothers have had to do that for centuries. He knows that now, and I think we're seeing more and more men in parenting roles, stay-at-home dads, and I think they're all starting to understand maybe what many women in the past have had to think about and trade off around balance. And I think also as a parent, it can be hard. I don't know about you, but the term sort of full-time parent kind of grates with me. Someone says, oh, you're not a full-time parent? When are we ever not full-time? You know, like I'm always a mum. You know, I may not be always the one who can collect our children from school or always be at their events, but I'm always their mum and I'm always there for them. And, you know, I have to be resilient against that, about that balance. I remember picking up my son once from school and this girl in his class says to me, oh, "You must be the mother. I've never seen you before." And I said, "Yeah, well, don't worry. I see him all the time. It's fine." But, and you can let those comments affect you, right? Even an 8-year-old girl can say something and you're like, "Oh my gosh, she's judging me." What do I do with that? I go home and cry. Talk to my sons and go, "Do you feel that way?" And, and they'll reassure me and say, "No, Mum, it's fine." They're lucky that they've got a wonderful dad also that can spend time with them at school. So that can be hard, but I know I need to do that, and I'm sure that's a case for many women doing things, and naturally for many dads too. I'm sure dads at work are equally interested in thinking about their children during their workday or whatever, wherever they're working at whatever time. And I think, all of us as a community need to be thinking about that balance, what it means for all of us as women, as men, as children, as brothers and sisters, as parents, as auntie and uncles, just supporting each other and understand that it is important for us to be able to share our views. But my view as a woman could be very different to your views, and that's totally okay. And that's what, coming back to Mark talking about diversity, it's not just having one woman around the table. Yeah, it's about having a good spread of all different perspectives, all different cultures, all different abilities. That's what makes the difference. So thank you so much for having me speak with you tonight. It's been a real honour. I know you're going to have some great inspiration coming up behind me, but I'd like to thank you for your time. Thank you.
So I asked a friend of mine to take this photo of me at this really funky restaurant in Auckland on the waterfront. It was a private dining room set up for some event that they were having later on that evening, and it was just too beautiful and too dramatic to pass it by. What you can't see in the background is there's a whole bunch of staff looking at me like, "Don't you break anything." So the woman in this photo is a woman that accepted the invitation to talk tonight. So she is a bit of a show-off. She has lots of ideas, she's articulate, she dazzles. But come earlier this week when I actually had to prepare the presentation, this lady went missing. And I'm like, and big part of that is because actually over the last little while, work has been really tough. There's just been lots of work that I've just had to get out the door, and I've just had to really knuckle down. And dazzling lady and hardworking lady, neither of them are good or bad. They're both actually people that I need at different times, right? But it would have been great if she had turned up. And then I was thinking earlier this week, really racking my brain for inspiration. I thought, actually, why do you need dazzling lady? Actually, Tui, when actually some of the most extraordinary moments in your life have come out of your ordinariness, routine, simplicity, and often out of adversity. So what I wanted to share with you tonight is the extraordinary of ordinary. And I lead a lot of innovation workshops for mainly in the culture and heritage sector, so about experiences. And a lot of those workshops are for Māori and Pacifica. And I am going to tell and share with you a few stories, and I hope that within those you find some of your extraordinariness out of your background and maybe out of your ordinariness. I'm going to get that really confused tonight, and that you grow to love and embrace that. This is a still from a game developed by a Brazilian gamer who grew up in the slums. It's called Papa and Yo, and I love to tell this story. And the game is based on his real-life experiences with his alcoholic, abusive father. So in the game, he has to go through many multiple challenges and quests. And alongside him, he has this red monster that will help him, except when the red monster comes across red berries. So when he eats the red berries, he becomes volatile. So this young guy is trying to navigate his way through the game and also keep the monster away from the berries. How he wins, in the end, is that he masters the challenges and he lets the monster go, because ultimately the monster isn't helping him.
And you kind of see what he drew on for that inspiration, right? And so when I share that, especially with some of our minority groups, it's about actually sometimes the inspiration, the innovation comes from the dark, and that's okay. So I'm from the culture and heritage sector, and when I first joined, I've just recently left Te Papa. Culture and heritage institutions are all about the experience, and experiences are all about the story. And what you think of whale bones, magically peering through the hallways, that happens maybe once in a while. And my colleagues would often bring out these objects that they'd just collected for the collections. And sometimes I'd be looking at this and going, that's not actually that impressive. This one is, but someone would go, actually, it's a bit tatty. What is this? And then they'd start talking about it. This is the thing that was used by that person when all of this stuff was happening. And when that was happening, that's what led to, and you're like transformed and mesmerized and taken off into this new place, right? And that whole object takes on a new meaning, a new purpose for you. So we often share that story just before we let people loose and go to listen out the back to the back of house collection curators talking about their stories. And the idea behind that for them is that actually when you're there, want you to be getting the information, but also thinking about what is the story, how are they telling that story, how can that be something that you incorporate into the work that you do. So we've got story, we've got coming from adversity, and then we've got diversity and participation. So I came to university here in Wellington from the very small lights of Gisborne, and coming to university was hard. It was a big cultural adjustment for me, and at first I didn't do so well. And in one of my English tutorials that we started, we were studying the book, The Colour Purple. This is one of the dedications at the front of that book. And no one knew what it was. They were like, what is this? They kind of knew who Stevie Wonder was, but what is this dedication? I was like, I know the answer to this. I told them, as I'm sure I'm going to tell you now, and I hope that most of you know this already. This is from the song, Show Me How to Do Like You, in his Hotter Than July album. And it's about two sisters who can both dance. And the younger one really wants to get up on stage, but no one will let her, and her older sister really champions her to do that. And if you all know the story of Colour Purple, you know how that resonates through that story, right? I knew that, little old me from Gisborne. And not only was I super cool because it was Stevie Wonder and he's a musical genius, but also it was just cool because I brought something new, something unexpected, and something delightful to the conversation. And 30 odd years later, I'm still harping on about it because it anchored something inside me. You know those moments that you have when you ask that great question at school and they said, that's the best question ever, and those little moments stay with you. They're what see you through, right? And then I tell this story. So not only is your participation important, your adversity, your diversity, your stories, but it's in your blood. So this was really inspired from actually attending the Global Women's Breakthrough Leadership Program and having to read the book Wayfinding Leadership by Dr. Shelley Spiller. There you go, that's a big advert for her. Highly recommended. And she talks about the fact that all of our ancestors, in particular Māori and Pacifica, found their way here on pretty primitive vessels, using not much more than actually a really sophisticated understanding of the stars, the migration patterns of birds, their understanding of ocean currents, and how waves move and change once they've hit landforms, about clouds. Really pretty incredible things, right? And when we think about the future that's coming towards us at a massive pace, what's required is new ways of thinking alongside traditional models and Western models like precision, like monitoring. All of those things together is actually what's going to have us succeed, which is why it's so important that actually for New Zealand, for our future prosperity, that all of our different voices are participating. But I also lead in those workshops. They're not just about uncovering your inner innovator. they're business courses. So we're actually looking to help people turn those ideas into a sustainable livelihood. So always be keeping your wits about you. Always be thinking of the commercial or the business angle. And I think this guy said it best. You got to know when to hold him, know when to fold him, know when to walk away, and know when to run. You never count your money. When you're sitting at the table, there'll be time enough for counting. When the deal is done, excellent. I can always tell how awesome an audience is if they join in, because you'll be amazed the number of times I've been left hanging on my own. And you'll remember that now, hopefully, and Stevie Wonder. So just a little bit about me. I raised my son as a single parent, and I had him later on in life in my late 30s. I'm not going to tell you how old I am. And when you have your kid that late and you've had an income for a while, you know, for me, it felt a little bit like a sentence. It's like, man, this is really monotonous. And I was lamenting to my friend that actually I feel like a bag lady. My whole day is packing bags, taking bags to a car, putting bags away again. She said, you know what, Tui? Mine is exactly the same, but it's food. I buy food, I cook food, I feed food to family, I clean up food. I do it all over again 3 more times. And I was thinking about that, and actually, my frame of reference was bags because I love organising. I love to travel and have the perfect capsule wardrobe. I rate myself, I do to this day, on my wardrobe packing, and give myself, you know, if I've done well, and I go, that was bad, you didn't wear that outfit, you've got to remember next time. My friend Bronwyn, her way that she shows and expresses love is through food. And so, you know, it was interesting that that was how she saw that, right? So actually, maybe in amongst our adversity, our diversity, our participation, also what there is that maybe within the routine and the monotony of what we're doing is our strengths, is our contribution. This picture was one that, the picture of me, not the dumplings. This is actually a gift that when I left Te Papa, my colleagues gave me. And what they did is they just threw in a whole bunch of things that kind of spoke to our time together. One of the things that you might not be able to see, it's quite small, is there is a dumpling on it. And I remember thinking to myself, it's over there by the chocolate. I remember thinking to myself, gee, I know we went to Yamcha a couple of times, but I didn't really feel like it was that big a deal, guys. And they said, no, don't you remember the Yamcha story? And I'd forgotten the story that I had told them that I'm going to now share with you. So my son is in his teenage years now. If you are good at maths, you'll work out that I'm quite old. But, and I read somewhere that actually around this age is the time that I've really got to strike. I've really got to get in all my wisdom now, because actually all those other kids, soon he's going to think I'm rubbish. And what I do is I trap him in the car, and that's when I impart my wisdom, when he can't move. And I said, darling, because, you know, there'd been a few, well, you know, sadly, there'd been a few suicides and, you know, and stuff. And I said, darling, I want to talk to you about romance, about sex, and I want to talk to you about heartache. I said, you know, like you might be thinking, you know, when you're wanting a romantic partner, that maybe they're not coming along. I said, but it's just like Yamcha. So when you're at Yamcha and you're sitting there, you're like, where is the food? I'm starving. And then maybe one dish comes out, and then another dish comes out. And then after a sudden, if you've done Yamcha, there's so many dishes, you're like, no, it's all right, I don't need that one yet. And then you're looking and you're going, I have such choice. I actually wish that was my experience, but I have such choice. And, you know, and you're absolutely stuffed. And, you know, if you don't like one dish, you just go on to another dish. You know, we have this really great frame of reference now about Yamcha. And I'd forgotten the story, and it was really cool for my friends to remind me of that story. And actually, it was just a really cool story, so I just wanted to share it with you. And now we all have a shared understanding of Yamcha. But just to end, my ancestral land, my Turanga Waiwai, is a place called Tauapara South, and it's on the tip of the Mahia Peninsula. On the east coast, so it's a beautiful slice of heaven, but getting access to our land is really difficult. There's no power, you have to get there by 4-wheel drive, and you have to get permission from all these people to go through their land, but it's ours. And in that sort of slice of heaven, many of our ancestors are buried there in the traditional way, which is sitting up facing the dawn. And there's a rock formation out in the ocean, and that is what my son is named after. It was a navigational point that my ancestors used to find their way back from the fishing ground. So, while we are rich in experience and joyfulness, pretty poor with money, so it's pretty humble for most of our family, not a lot going on, and you sort of think, what could ever happen that might change that? And something did happen. Some bright spark in Auckland decided that we were going to enter the commercial space race. And so we now have rockets shooting off from not far away from our ancestral land. We don't actually personally benefit from that, not yet anyway, but here's hoping. But the thing I wanted to leave you with is it just absolutely blew my mind. We were thinking that, of this long, protracted struggle, and someone just absolutely flipped that on its head. So my challenge for you tonight is to think about, where is disruption coming from? What are your stories? What is the beauty in your ordinariness, the routine, the adversity that you'll face that can be your extraordinary contribution to the world on top of what you're already doing? Thank you.
I ngā mana, i ngā reo, i ngā karangatanga maha, tēnā koutou katoa. I was really hoping I wasn't following that act. But it's truly life-affirming to be here tonight on International Women's Day with you all, such a diverse and inspirational group of people, speakers and attendees alike. This year, I don't know that it's as celebrated as it should be, but this year actually marks 100 years since women in New Zealand were able to enter Parliament. And last year we celebrated 125 years since we got the vote, since any woman in the world got the vote. But I don't think many of us realize that it was another 2.5 decades until we could actually participate as equals in our democracy. So I think it's a really apt point of reflection about what substantive equality means to women, to minorities, to tangata whenua. And I say that because as women, we're not all always experiencing gender as our main point of oppression. I'm very acutely aware that every time I stand on a stage, I come with the honour and burden of being crowned the very first refugee to enter New Zealand's Parliament, and as a migrant woman, as a woman of colour, as a woman from the so-called Muslim world. And so tonight I speak to some extent from all of those identity points because I can't shed my skin. And so I think when we think about equality, we have to start from a place where we accept that equality doesn't mean sameness, and it doesn't mean assimilation. So we all bring what we bring, and we can't help that. But I do want to talk about equality in terms of representation, as opposed to diversity, because although I talk about diversity a lot, I think it's started to lose its meaning. And a friend of mine who's a filmmaker, an Iranian Kiwi filmmaker, Ghazala Gulbakhsh, wrote about this recently and put it really well when she was talking about Hollywood, what diversity means versus representation. And she was talking about how diversity seems to mean that you have a black character and an Asian character, and you sometimes have a film that's dominated by those minority identities or women. But they're caricatures, and they're far and few in between, and sometimes they get nominated for Oscars, but very, very few times do they get to win. Whereas representation means you have women and minorities in the writing room. You have them behind the camera. You have us making funding decisions, picking the projects, because we actually have to have a hand in shaping the world before we can be represented in an authentic and multifaceted way, in the way that we deserve. And I thought about the way that that translates in politics, and how we do need to be at that decision-making table, and how 100 years ago, women in New Zealand said that it isn't actually enough for us to get to vote for the best man for the job. We do need to be at that decision-making table, otherwise our issues will not be voiced. And if they are voiced, they're not going to be addressed in a way that's actually going to suit us. And in any case, who's deciding what women's issues are? We're experiencing the range of issues. We're experiencing the world as women, as Māori women, as migrant women, as disabled women, as gender diverse peoples, as neurodiverse people. We are experiencing housing and roads and the workforce and our natural environment as women. So how is an able-bodied Pākehā man going to decide what issues will affect a disabled woman of colour? She's experiencing the range of issues. And that made me think about my portfolios as an MP. And I know that I come as a Middle Eastern woman as well as an international lawyer to the defence portfolio. I come as a child asylum seeker, as well as bringing my experience of working at the UN to the foreign affairs portfolio. I come as a migrant woman of colour out there in the world, as well as someone who's had a decade-odd experience in the criminal justice system, including coming in and out of prisons. When I talk about justice. So let's look at justice and what representation means. And I sort of see it as three layers. And when I worked for the UN and the international tribunals, we often had to do outreach, and we used to have to think about, what does gender mean in terms of the justice system internationally? And we always used to celebrate the fact that we now try gender-based violence in international law. And so you look at New Zealand's justice system, and of course, it means that we have to focus on the overwhelmingly gendered crimes of sexual and domestic violence as women's issues in the justice system. We have to have women involved. We have to have our specialised courts that we have. And for that to be effective, it means women need to be represented in the design and in the execution of trials and of domestic and sexual violence. But that's ghettoising our input if we stop there. Because actually women are experiencing all crimes as women, whether as victims, as witnesses, as accused persons, as prisoners. So we have to have women judges and lawyers and police officers and correction officers across the board in our justice system. And then more than that, a Māori woman, a migrant woman, a disabled woman, a trans woman is having a very different experience when she reports a crime, when she appears as a witness, when she enters prison. So we have to have intersectional representation in our system of justice and designing it and delivering upon it, because that's what representation means. Because lived experience matters. And so we keep encouraging women, young women, to stand up and participate, right? Because we need representation. But since, I've had a year and a half of being an MP and about a year before that of being a candidate, I've realised that we're being unfair, because actually we need to change the system as well. It's not just about telling women to lean in and to shatter the glass ceiling. It's unsafe for them And it felt unsafe for me for quite a while. Because the minute I was identified as someone who was a refugee and, from the so-called Muslim world and all of that, whilst I got an absolute barrage of support and love from all over the world, it happened to coincide with Trump's Muslim ban coming into effect. And so I did get that love from all over the world, from Britain under Brexit and from Trump's America and from around New Zealand, where we could celebrate us being different and being that counterpoint. I totally did get that, and I do get it, and I'm so grateful for it. But at the same time, I also got a barrage of vitriol and hate. And it is constant, and it is unrelenting, and it is about being a woman, being youth adjacent, being of colour. And so we do have to change the system. And one of the things that annoys me at the moment, in terms of the attack that we get, the way that we're being silenced online and in public life, is this idea that talking about representation and trying to change that system is an appeal to identity politics. But if you're me and you've been through this, you know that identity and democracy are inseparable, because I can't shed my skin. And in any case, what do we mean when we talk about identity politics? It seems to be that they're talking about fairness or impartiality coming from a stripping away of gender identity and ethnic identities. But what issues are we erasing then? Because in New Zealand, we know that women get paid 9% less on average than men for the same work. So gender is a material issue. We know that Pākehā women in that broader group of women get paid 6% less than men, whilst Asian women get paid 18% less. Māori women get paid 20% less, and Pacific women get paid a whopping 23% less than the average man. So race is a material issue. But it seems like the more privilege that an identity point carries, the less we see it as an identity at all. So nobody asks me when I came out as straight. And nobody realizes that actually straight people have for centuries forcefully and violently sometimes imposed their sexual identity upon the rainbow community. Nobody talks about the way that civic planning benefits the able-bodied, not the disabled, and nobody tells bankers to stop talking about the economy because of their very real interest in it, the way that they tell us to stop talking about gender or me talking about ethnic issues. And of course, the irony of it is that the same people with the same breath then scream about feminists and Muslims, and how is that not identity politics? So we need to bring our identities to our democracy, because lived experience does matter, but we also need to understand that we need to change the system that has for millennia delivered a certain outcome and privileged certain identity points, as well as encouraging young women and minorities to stand up and be represented, because they can't change it on their own. And we need to change it together. We need to make space if we have privilege, if we are men, if we are Pākehā women, if we are able-bodied, if we're straight, if we're cisgendered. We need to actually stop and make that space. That's what I'd like to see, rather than us constantly telling the vulnerable to push themselves forward whilst it's still unsafe.
Tēnā koutou ko Matarangi te maunga, ko Rakawa te moana, ko Pakea te iwi. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. International Women's Day is about celebrating the social and economic and cultural political achievements of women. And don't get me wrong, there are many of those to be celebrated. But as I prepared for this evening, it got me wondering whether the woman, inevitably, who will clean this auditorium long after we leave here tonight, even know it's International Women's Day. I wonder if the mothers who collapsed home late last night after working double shifts to support their struggling families and then slept for a couple of hours, got up to get their kids off to school, feel like celebrating International Women's Day. I wonder if the women who were beaten or otherwise hurt this morning, and will experience it again this evening, feel like International Women's Day means something to them. I wonder if the women who are locked in our prisons tonight feel that aspiring to a gender-balanced world will help them in any way. I find myself asking whether this day, our day, that has been celebrated around the globe for over 100 years, matters to me only because I get to dress like this, speak like this, look like this, be a partner in a large commercial law firm, own my own home, have financial security to look after my 4 children, save for my retirement. I wonder whether building this gender-balanced world requires me first to build an inclusive one amongst all of us women. I think it does. Better the balance, better the world. We women, both here and abroad, are fighting for gender balance. But I ask, do we do enough to fight for all of us to participate in that struggle? Not only to get more women into boardrooms and into government and into public roles, which, don't get me wrong, matters. It's important. And that fight has been advanced by great organisations like Global Women. But are we fighting hard enough, long enough, loud enough to get more women into safe homes, into safe relationships, into safe workplaces, to get them to a place where even becoming a champion for gender balance is relevant to their day-to-day struggles? Statistics suggest otherwise. Let's start with our homes here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. A police call-out for a family violence incident in this country, our country, happens every 4 minutes. 2 will happen in the time that I stand on this stage tonight. And we all know that the actual frequency is far greater. 3 out of 4 aren't reported. You do the math. It's pretty easy. That means every minute there is a family violent incident in our country. So we get to 10 within the time I'm just standing here in front of you. Let's go to our relationships. 1 in 3 women in our country has been a victim of physical violence from a partner in her lifetime. When psychological and emotional abuse is added to that, it's more than half of us. If that wasn't bad enough, 1 in 4 of us will experience sexual violence. Let's go to our workplaces, where women earn 90 cents on the dollar compared to men, and where I suspect most women could describe hearing stories, and many could describe experiencing firsthand sexual harassment. When I returned to New Zealand in 2010, I'd spent over 11 years in New York working as a Wall Street lawyer. I'd also spent a lot of those years volunteering as a lawyer in decaying projects in Harlem, in despairing family courts in the Bronx, and in women's prisons around New York State. And I didn't know those statistics when I arrived home. And I wonder truly if I'd known them before I even left. And I wonder, even if I had, whether they would have connected to me. For I'd never seen violence in my home, never seen my father be anything other than respectful to my mother, never been in a relationship where a boyfriend has hurt or mistreated me. I thought that the harrowing stories of rape and torture that I needed to recount in immigration courts in the US when I tried to get asylum for a refugee woman, the evidence of sexual slavery that I'd recorded when I volunteered for an NGO in West Africa, and the accounts of domestic violence that I'd introduced as evidence into US courts representing women who were having their parental rights terminated just because they were incarcerated were things of my past. Something that had happened offshore, something to which I would not need to return when I came home to raise my own 4 children. But those statistics, our statistics, I heard them, I read them, and I felt them. They required something of me, more of me, and that's what led to the Who Did You Help Today charitable trust and our initiatives there. The Mothers Project, which helps imprisoned women in prisons all around New Zealand. Homework Club, which helps corporate and other volunteers connect to low decile schools and enable those volunteers to meet some of the most awesome kids, the future of our country. Help Tank, helping volunteers through a digital platform to connect to community cause and give back using their skills. And I want to acknowledge here tonight the people who have attended that are participating in this program, the teachers from Rangikura School, Russell School, Glenville School, and Holy Family School, the wonderful people from the likes of Skylight, NISA, Volunteering NZ, the Celia Lashley Trust, NCWNZ and Belly Fuel, the members of the Who Did You Help Today team who keep Mothers Project and Help Tank running, who are here. You are bettering the balance. You are bettering the world. Your voices belong here, on this stage. I fear that my voice does not do you or others like you justice. I fear that because I have represented abused women, worked in disadvantaged communities, and advocated for social and criminal reform, I am somehow seen as representative of someone I am not. I despair that my voice might be listened to when there are others far better qualified than me to speak the words that matter and that must be heard around our country. I worry whether I can speak properly to issues of disadvantage and vulnerability when I'm not in those circumstances myself. When my experiences of those challenges are through the luxury of only being the lawyer or the volunteer. I anguish over whether to speak out, not because I fear criticism, but because I might silence those who are more deserving to be heard. And these struggles are not new. Historically, we all know that feminism has attracted concern about whether it was the catch cry only of white, privileged women. Having not been born one, in a working farming family in the rural Manawatu, where I was the first in my family to go to university. My mum's here with me tonight. It concerns me that I could now be perceived negatively as one. So I remind myself this evening that better the balance means being willing to share the stage and enable others to come to the conversation, to let the lives and challenges of all New Zealand women become more of a focus of the struggle. I look forward to that. I suspect you do too. And so on this day, International Women's Day, as we stake claim to fighting for a gender-balanced world, let us also demand more for each and every New Zealand woman. The ones who are not here this evening, who don't have the luxury of celebrating much in life, let alone International Women's Day. The woman who may never sit where we do, yet who we must stand alongside. And when they cannot stand, who we must support, help out, help up, help share the better balanced world that we can all together create. Thank you.
I'm tired. Are you tired? I have to say that because today I'm going to, before the end of my speech address to you, I'm going to make a little pact with you. I feel that International Women's Day, for me, for all of us, is incredibly auspicious. But for me, I've been on, I try to avoid that word journey, but I have been on a really tumultuous journey for quite some time, and in particular over the last year. And I see tonight as the very final event of that journey. And tomorrow morning I'm going to wake up and feel completely different. So let me just explain a little bit about that, because for me it is a little bit about explaining what I think balance, #balance for better, means in terms of where I am now and where you are all now. Let me start with Celia Lashley. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Stacey. And thank many other people who I know are in the audience who have given me so much support and given Celia so much recognition for the amazing messages, the wisdom and the power of what she has given me as a gift to make this film about her. So I'm going to pull from my pocket something that is in the film. And if you haven't seen the film, then this is my one and only plug. You should. On this very auspicious day, which is all about giving voice to women and giving real clarity and purpose and meaning, I want to read a quote from Celia. And to me, it sums up the #balance for better. There is a purpose we came for, and we ignore the yearning of our spirit until finally our body says no. This is Celia, got some signals to stop rescuing people, to take care of me, but I just didn't pay attention. Does that feel like some of you every so often? About rescuing people, about not paying attention? It sure as hell feels like me. And that's the hypocrisy. I'm going to put that back in my pocket now. That's the kind of thing that if my husband was here right now, he'd be going, what a load of crock, Amanda. You're a hypocrite. Because my husband, bless his socks, John, has watched me work so hard to make this film. And every so often he'd say to me, you're not listening to Celia. If Celia was here, she would say, take care of yourself. Because he's seen me work harder than I've ever worked before. And God knows, I know as a reporter for 60 Minutes for years, I used to get so absorbed in my stories and so propelled by what I was doing that I often did lose perspective. At this age I am, slightly just a little bit older than you two, but not much, no jokes. I should know better. I should know better. After everything I've gone through, I should know better. But the thing about women and the thing about what we do in our lives is that we care so much, we want to deliver so much, and we want to be the best and we want to do the best job. And with that sense of urgency and responsibility, there is a cost. And right now, there was a survey done at the Priory Wellbeing Centre in London. 40,000 households found that women suffer 50% more stress than men. It is huge, and that's why we need balance. So if I look back to Celia and where this all started, it was January 2015 when she came to me and said, I have terminal cancer. I have unfinished business. I want to talk about it. I want to put it out there so people can continue my work and so my messages will live on long after I've gone. Me being the person who just doesn't like saying no, everything's exciting, I've got to say yes, of course. And this was Celia. I'd known her for 15 years. I'd done various stories with her, and I'd made a real decision when I met her in my job as a reporter that I was damn well going to meet up with her somewhere along the way, and I was going to work for her in her area of social justice. It meant a huge amount to me. So I did that. And then this happened in 2015. It was a huge shock because she told us she had 12 to 18 months. Plenty of time to make a documentary. We finally started on February the 14th. We had 1.5 hours worth of interview. 2 days later, she passed away. So my job was to take that hour-and-a-half documentary and create the film that I knew she would be proud of. And the thing that I knew all along was that she knew when she gave that interview how little time she had. And that was part of that statement about that yearning of the spirit, that she'd never listened to the signs because she was so propelled by that sense of urgency and responsibility and to deliver help to those who needed it. So much so that it came at the cost of her life and her work. You know, sometimes I'd say to her, Celia, why are you even responding to individual emails? A mother whose son had got into trouble would be writing to her about, you know, Johnny's a really, really good boy, but blah, 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 blah. And Celia would dutifully write a personal response. I'd say, you cannot sustain this. You cannot keep going like this. It is just not fair on you. But she was so driven, and she says this in the interview, that the burden became so great that she had to keep going. And why I tell that story for all of you is that I know that that is what drives a lot of women. We have so much on board that we feel we need to achieve and we need to deliver. If I go back to that research in terms of the Priory Wellbeing Centre, 1.5 times more likely to get stressed. And why are we stressed, especially in the 35 to 54-year-old age group, is because even though it's the 21st century, we are still thinking that we can do it all. Or you can. I'm a little bit older than that, but yes. It is still absolutely foremost in our minds that we have to do it all. We have to have the perfect family life, or not necessarily perfect, but we have to run a family. We have to have a career. We have to have a successful career. We want to be involved in communities. We want to have our friends. Something has to give, and it will be you that has to give it. So we need you if we are going to have a generation of powerful women, of leaders, of people that can help change those ugly statistics that Stacey talked about and that feature in the film. We need women like you, and of course men, but women need to have the strength, the capacity, and the health to get them there. So, if we look ahead at what's ahead, and I think back to my husband, who would be, as I say, you know, Amanda, you've got to set the example. I've decided, this only came to me as I kind of walked in tonight, I know, I'm going to put it out there, because the problem with me, it's a bit like dieting. You give it a go for a couple of days, and then the nice big juicy bit of chocolate comes along or something else, you go, faff, tomorrow it'll start, or whatever it is. You know, when we decide to do something, it is about discipline. And some things I'm incredibly disciplined about, but if it's about me, not quite so disciplined. So I've decided I am going to ask for some help tonight. I thought the only thing that I'm going to do that will help me achieve this purpose is, I have a business mentor. I've decided I'm making a pact with every one of you tonight that I'm going to get myself a me mentor, okay? You are all my witness to that, and I want you also to think about whether or not you need your own me mentor, because I'm damn sure that your lives, knowing some of these women in this audience, have incredible tasks ahead of you, have incredible loads that you carry, have incredible pressure on you every single day and night, and yet we keep going. And if we keep going at the way we're going to do, that stress will kill us, and we do not want to lose anyone like we lost our Celia. So for the sake of your health, for the sake of your families, for the sake of your country, please take that balance and look after yourself. Please, thank you.
Wow, what a gift you have all shared with us, and I have the delight in thanking you individually for that gift that you have shared. Each one of you has given us something special. Each one of you has given us pause to reflect about how we operate, how we behave, and how we can contribute. Each one of you has told us about our privilege, and I'm really conscious about when we don't know we have privilege and when to watch it for others and when to be prepared. So I from the bottom of my heart and very emotionally want to thank you for today. Today is a day that we can get caught up in the celebrations, as Stacey said, but it's also a day we have to reflect to go, crap, we've got a long way to go. Crap, each of us have got to do things. And we want to thank you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So please join me in thanking again our wonderful speakers. Thank you, our audience, for coming tonight to enjoy the event and to listen to everybody. It's a wonderful event because you've been here. There are refreshments outside. We'd like you to join us. We'd like you to mix and to mingle, to think about what you've heard today. Come and talk to our guest speakers. I know they'd be honoured to talk to you as well. Ka kite and have a lovely night. Thank you.